everybody had a really good day today. This is Friday, and it's Friday morning where I'm at, and Friday evening where you're at. Today, I will not be live at all. I'll be recording the entire lecture, and your professor will be able to have some discussion with you at the end. I anticipate that this will last about 1 hour of lecture time. It's divided into 3 different sections. So I'm going to record 20 minutes or so and then stop and come back and do 20 minutes more and then 20 minutes more for a third one. So it may look a little bit disconnected, but it's just makes it easier to send the files. So that's what we've decided to do. Okay, let's get started. I have to say, I guess, in the intro, before we go to the PowerPoint, that the world seems to be changing right before our eyes. And I know for me, when I was the busiest in my life, and that's when I was trying to finish my dissertation for my PhD, working and all that kind of business, I don't know that I had time to really fully understand what was going on in the world like I normally do. I usually follow world events very, very carefully because of the education that I had growing up. And the world is changing, and the world seems to be odd. And I think these lectures that I've been trying to present you gives you an alternate way of being in the world. And hopefully you can pass this on to the people that you're either teaching or helping or being with. So I find it to be very timely. So I hope that you can see applicability directly into the world that we exist in today. So that being said, let's begin. Full screen. Okay. So the name of this particular lecture is called Wellness, Agape Love, Suffering, and Legacy. And that's a whole lot of pretty significant and meaty topics that we're going to not be superficial with, I don't think, but give you an overview. And it really, in a way, it starts with this concept of wellness. And so Adler proposed that we have 3 life tasks: the task of love, the task of work, and the task of relationships. And those who study Adler, you can understand the distinction between these and understand the nuances and how and why he came to that conclusion in his theory. Now, you have to keep in mind that Adler never wrote a comprehensive theory. That was done after his death. He died in 1935, fairly early in his life. But others have kind of carried on his work through his speeches and through what he did write. And those were the 3 life tasks that he had proposed. More modern Adlerians, that is those that were contemporaries to my wife and I, have added 2 additional tasks: the relationship with self and the relationship with the cosmos. And why is this important? And this goes back to what we talked about in the first time that I met with you, and that was social interest as a key concept of Adlerian psychology. And so the key concept of social interest is cooperating and contributing. So when we are cooperating and contributing to society and striving in all these tasks, we have optimal mental health. So you can kind of, and this is the way I can conceptualize it, as a wheel. And you can divide the wheel into 5 sections and kind of self-assess where you are on each one of those life tasks. Now, you have to have more information to be able to do that. But the point being is the more balanced your life is, when you have work that's all up here, or study all that's up here, and relationships kind of fade away, or a family kind of fades away, or taking care of self kind of goes away. All you have is this, and this is imbalance. What you need is a good balance in all these tasks, and a striving toward is kind of the key concept. Then there's not going to be a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of suicide, all those sorts of things, because you'll have optimal mental health. But as we'll talk about, continuing in some of the lectures that I'll be doing particularly, we can talk about what gets in the way of our ability to be able to do this. Okay, so we need to move on. So wellness, the concept of wellness, is not the absence of disease, but the optimal functioning in all aspects of life. So if we have the capacity of optimal functioning in all aspects of our life, and yet still have a chronic disorder, whatever it might be, and we're managing that, yeah, we may have disease, but we also have wellness. Wellness can be thought of domains and subdomains. So these are the domains of wellness. And this is, there's a couple of Adlerians some years ago that kind of developed this, and it seems to be a pretty healthy or pretty comprehensive way of looking at wellness. So of those 5 spokes of the circle that I just mentioned, the 5 spokes would be physical health, social well-being, love capacity, occupation, vocation, leisure health, and then existential or spiritual health. So let's take a look at each one of these very briefly. Physical well-being, this is not about physical status, but about optimal physical functioning. So we have a lot to consider with that. What does that mean? Well, we can over-exercise, we can over-work out, we can have very developed muscles, but not necessarily have good physical functioning. So physical functioning is about moving, being able to, as we go through the lifespan and age, we can still look and act and be healthy. We can be mobile. We can do what is necessary to get on with our life. Nutrition, boy, that's a tough one. I know that my health is directly related to nutrition. There's no doubt in my mind about that. About 10 years ago, my wife and I decided, she mostly, and I was a pretty good follower, to kind of look at our nutrition. And even though it was probably not bad at all, it's probably good by a lot of standards, it could be greatly improved. And we have greatly improved our nutrition. She has become certified as a health coach, and other things that she's learned allows her to be very critical with the analysis of what is good for you and what's not good for you. So you do hear a lot of conflicting comments from this is good and this is bad, but you have to be able to critically analyze. So it takes some effort and takes some work, and I certainly am the beneficiary of that. Exercise, it needs to be age related. In other words, as you get older, you probably don't want to be jogging. It's just terrible for your knees and your back and your hips over time. And so it may be great and helps you through life, jogging, running, but in fact, it's as you get older, it's really counterindicated and probably shouldn't exist. Walking is very healthy, but walking also has to be done in moderation and based on age related. Hygiene, just taking care of yourself, brushing your teeth properly, making sure that you stay clean and wear masks and stay away from disease opportunities. Lifestyle habits, this would include things like how you use substances like tobacco, alcohol, things of this nature. Stress management, I think everybody knows what stress management is. The point is, if we know it, do we do it? And I think most people know it, but not too many people do it. So if you're commuting to and from, you got 20 or 30 minutes. I think sleeping is what I typically see people in Taiwan that are on the public transportation. But I once in a while see somebody that's actually meditating. And I've often wondered what's more beneficial, the sleeping or the meditation. And I think most would agree it's probably the meditation. Okay. Chronic illness management. So what that means is when we do experience chronic illness, how do we manage it? Do we manage it effectively? Oftentimes things like prediabetes and even diabetes can be reversed simply by good self-care. and not necessarily just taking drugs that doctors prescribe. The bottom line is if you take responsibility for your chronic illness, research it, ask questions, work with the doctor, things of this nature, then that's very helpful towards your physical well-being. Now, there's probably some other things that we could add into this physical well-being, but I think you get the idea. So these are kind of sub-ideas and that you can just determine yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. Where are you on each one of these? And that should be helpful. Social well-being. This is about relationships, temperament, and emotional intelligence. Sometimes we talk about personality. Personality is a fairly vague word unless we operationally define it. But emotional intelligence is pretty well defined. You can look it up or Google it, and you'll see what emotional intelligence is all about. It's a very interesting concept, and it's probably very accurate. So what are some ways that we can increase our emotional intelligence? Temperament is another one. So some people are just kind of got a short fuse. They tend to show displeasure through their body language or through their words very easily. Others seem to be more calm and laid back. Well, I think each one of us has a temperament that we tend to be our default. But if our default to that temperament is not good, can we modify it? And of course we can. And so let's look at our temperament. I'm an introvert, so I have to sometimes step out of my introversion into extroversion. And just because that's the way life works, extroverts tend to get the bigger piece of the pie. And I think that it's important for introverts to be able to understand and not just be a victim to their temperament, but take responsibility for it and know when there's a time and a place to step out of your temperament and maybe adjust that. Relationships, how can we strengthen our relationships? And again, a lot of Adlerian psychology talks about belonging, talks about being a part of, contributing to, and relationships is really, to me, one of the keys of happiness and being able to exist in the world is with strong, good relationships. Do you have a lot of relationships that are fractured? And if so, how can you repair those relationships? Or the relationships that you have, how can you strengthen them? Love capacity. This is really about how well do we encourage and discourage appropriate intimacy. Now, everybody's going to self-define that, and there's probably not a single way to think about that, but it's something for you to think about. How do you encourage or discourage appropriate intimacy? And then we're going to be talking in just a few minutes a lot more about this concept of agape love. And so agape love is a perfect kind of love. It's a goal. It's probably not attainable in this world. And we'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. But that could be a goal, is to be able to get to this concept or idea of agape love. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. So occupation, vocational, and leisure health. So what we're looking for here is a balance. So I'm going to go to that second bullet and talk about that for a second first. Does even hard, I should have said difficult, does even difficult or mundane work bring us joy? Or I probably should have changed that. Can even difficult or mundane work bring us joy? And the answer is yes, it is. A lot of times in our lives, we will end up doing very difficult or very mundane work, maybe dirty work. I've certainly had jobs over the years that I would come home so dirty and so exhausted. And yet we can still experience joy from that. I think it's my last lecture that I'll be doing, I think in late December. I'll be talking about joy and awe, A-W-E, awe, and how it's always available to us. And so if we don't like the job that we're in and maybe even dislike it a great deal, can we still make it tolerable during the period of time that we have to do that kind of work? And then how is our career development? How have we looked at our career development? What is the likelihood that what we're doing is our calling as opposed to just simply what others thought we should be doing? We talked a little bit about that, I think, the last week when we got together. And then finally, the existential and spiritual health. And this is all about asking the big questions. Why am I here? What is the meaning of life? What is the meaning of my life? These sorts of things. So this existential and spiritual health, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to believe in anything specifically like religion. Religion can be a corollary or related to answering the big questions. But I think more significantly, or probably even more importantly, is that we ask these questions, not necessarily who's helping us to answer them. Religion can often help us to answer these, but just as often, I think these questions can be answered in other means. The point is, are we a materialist or a spiritualist? Do we believe in that just what is here, what we see here and now, that's all that exists? And when we die, it's done. We're dead. That's a materialist. A spiritualist, on the other hand, believes that there's a lot more to life than this life, that our soul survives us, that there is an afterlife, things of this nature. Now, I'm not going to tell you what I believe necessarily because it's a moving target sometimes. When I ask these questions, I sometimes get different routes or ways of answering those questions. But I think the point is, again, as I said last week, it's important that we do ask and consider these questions. Okay, so I'm going to take a short break at this point, and we'll come back and we'll talk about our next topic. Oh, wait a second. Nope, I do have to do this slide. Okay, so this is kind of a little bit of a recap, and I got ahead of myself. Wellness is about honest assessment and deciding how to improve in areas that you desire to improve. So the previous slides kind of gives you a template of what those areas are, and you can ask those questions. What areas can you improve? What areas do you want to improve? What areas do you definitely desire to improve? And then kind of develop some strategy. I'll talk about a little bit later in the semester, I'll talk about motivational interviewing. And motivational interviewing is a pretty good way of being able to help you in some of the changes that you want to make. So kind of bookmark this particular sub lecture and wellness. And when we go to motivational interviewing in a few weeks, you'll be able to maybe apply motivational interviewing to this question of how do you improve in areas that you desire to improve in. And then too often, cultural influences complicate our goal towards wellness. As an example of that would be sacrificing your health for work. Certainly, we've heard about Japanese employees that work themselves to death. I'm sure in Taiwan, there are probably examples of that as well. I think any society that is very hierarchical and very competitive, you'll have oftentimes people sacrificing their health for work, sacrificing relationships for work, or the opposite, sacrificing work for relationships. So at any rate, there are cultural influences that can complicate our goals towards wellness, and we have to take those into consideration and find a way to make a balance of some sort. Okay, at this point, I'm going to take a very short break just so that I can download this particular file, and then we'll be right back, and we'll be talking about suffering, agape love, and recovery. Well, good evening, and I hope that everybody had a really good day today. This is Friday, and it's Friday morning where I'm at, and Friday evening where you're at. Today, I will not be live at all. I'll be recording the entire lecture, and your professor will be able to have some discussion with you at the end. I anticipate that this will last about 1 hour of lecture time. It's divided into 3 different sections. So I'm going to record 20 minutes or so and then stop and come back and do 20 minutes more and then 20 minutes more for a third one. So it may look a little bit disconnected, but it's just makes it easier to send the files. So that's what we've decided to do. Okay, let's get started. I have to say, I guess, in intro, before we go to the PowerPoint, that the world seems to be changing right before our eyes. And I know for me, when I was the busiest in my life, and that's when I was trying to finish my dissertation for my PhD, working and all that kind of business, I don't know that I had time to really fully understand what was going on in the world like I normally do. I usually follow world events very, very carefully because of the education that I had growing up. And the world is changing, and the world seems to be odd. And I think these lectures that I've been trying to present you gives you an alternate way of being in the world. And hopefully you can pass this on to the people that you're either teaching or helping or being with. So I find it to be very timely. So I hope that you can see applicability directly into the world that we exist in today. So that being said, let's begin. Full screen. Okay, so the name of this particular lecture is called Wellness, Agape Love. Okay, back, and this will be the last segment of tonight's lecture, third one, and this one's called Legacy. And I didn't write this definition down, but I just want to give it to you. And so you, in case legacy isn't translating very well, this is the definition that I would use to define the word legacy. It's the long-lasting impact of particular events, actions, etc., that took place in the past or of a person's life. So I'll read that one more time again. The long-lasting impact of particular events, actions, etc., that took place in the past or of a person's life. So we'll go back to this definition if we need to, but that's the general definition of what legacy is. And so I'm going to go to the PowerPoint now. There it go. Okay. So this is a quote that we'll start off this section with. We transmit our wisdom to future generations. This process not only seeds the future, but crowns and